What is up, epic gamers? I am back with another Sonic Adventure 2 challenge. We've done the game as Sonic and Rouge, and you guys really love those videos, so now it's time to complete the trilogy by trying to beat the game using only Tails. The reason I'm going with Tails instead of Eggman is Tails actually has 3 alternate forms. He has his Mechless form, which you normally only use in the Chow Garden, and he has a secret alternate skin that you can unlock in the multiplayer. We'll go over the specifics of which each form changes when we actually use them during this challenge. However, we're only going to use these alternate forms if it's actually necessary. I want to prioritize using the standard Tails mech as this is what most people are familiar with, and it's how we've been doing it with all the other characters. And as with all these challenges, we'll be skipping any level that is normally done by Tails or Eggman, as these are the intended levels for the mech characters, so there's nothing interesting to talk about. And one last thing before we get things started, for those who are new to my channel, I make tons of Sonic Adventure content just like this. I also stream all of my gameplay right here on YouTube and Twitch, so if you want to see more videos like this or you want to catch one of my next live streams, make sure you subscribe to the channel and then check my channel page to see when the next upcoming live stream is. With that said, let's get this challenge started with City Escape. This one's actually kind of nostalgic because 2 months ago I decided to start making these YouTube videos again after taking a long break from YouTube, and Can Tails Beat City Escape was actually the first one that I did, and that sort of kicked off this entire series. We hit a few problems with the dash pads in this level. For some reason, Tails will get stuck on these dash pads because of an invisible wall, and even if we try jumping over the pads, this wall still stops us from progressing. This is really weird because as far as I can tell, this wall does not exist for Sonic or any other character for that matter. So to get over it, we'll just need to glide from an earlier point in the level. Thankfully, City Escape is a very vertical level, so we can get pretty high up. This comes in handy here too, as we can't get high enough on these springs to make it onto the ledge, so again, we just gotta backtrack a little bit and then glide from a higher point to move on. The loop after the courtyard does work, and it is pretty hilarious watching him run down the wall. I think he's actually running faster than Sonic here. We can make it all the way to the end of the level, and this is where we come to a stop, as Tails cannot get under this wall to reach the truck chasing part. To get past this, we're going to need to go pretty far back, as there are invisible ceilings stopping us from getting high enough to make it over the wall. Rouge was able to get out of bounds in the courtyard by climbing an invisible wall, but for Tails, we gotta go all the way back to the beginning of the level to get out of bounds. From here, we just gotta carefully fly to the other side of that wall. We don't have a lot of visual references to determine where we are, but I've done so many out of bounds experiments on City Escape, I know the general direction to the finish line. We also could just fly all the way to the end of the level this way, but I know you guys want to see Tails get chased by the big truck, so here it is. Tails actually goes way faster than the truck on these steep hills. I did try to turn around and shoot the truck, but it doesn't do anything, so back to running down the hill we go to finish the level. Or so we thought, because remember how we got stuck at the invisible wall at the beginning? Well, turns out there's another invisible wall right here at the end. So now we gotta start the level all over again, and this time we gotta make sure that we fly over that invisible wall. It took us a lot of time, but we are able to beat City Escape using Tails. The Bigfoot boss fight is pretty straightforward. We can just jump and attack him when he lands, or we can use the boxes to get some early hits in. The only really interesting thing here is that Tails can actually target his missiles, which doesn't really do anything for us, but it's kinda cool. Wild Canyon is our first treasure hunting level, and luckily we found a free emerald right at the beginning, so off to a good start there. We can make it up to the top of the level using the wind by tapping the glide button a bunch of times. So Tails does have access to the entire level, which is not going to be the case in most of these levels, so we lucked out here. Our second emerald was in these boxes, easy enough, and the last emerald was inside this box, which Tails cannot break, so we need to die to reset the level and get a new emerald location. And as I explained in the Sonic challenge, it's important that we actually need to die, not just hit reset from the menu, as that will reload the entire level and we'll lose all the emeralds we already collected. After a reset, our new emerald was inside these wooden boxes that we can break, so we beat the level and move on to Metal Harbor. And this one is pretty tricky. The first dash pad doesn't get us far enough, so we need to glide and clip through the floor. The second set of springs does not get us far enough either, so we have to jump on these moving boxes to get on top here and then make it across. The third set of springs barely gets us up to the next ledge, and surprisingly the next set of springs actually does work for Tails, but that's where we hit a problem. This gap is really big, and the platform that we need to make it on top of is higher than the one that we're starting from. So it looks pretty hopeless, so this is a pretty good time to talk about Tails' alternate outfit. Each character in this game has a secret outfit that you unlock by getting an A rank in all of their stages. Tails' outfit is the Red Tornado from Sonic Adventure 1, and as you can see, it is very fast. You might think I'm using some sort of a turbo cheat here, but no, this is actually just how fast he goes. And this absolutely breaks the game in so many ways. I even got him stuck inside of a wall here. That's how fast that he's going. With this insane speed, we not only make it across the gap with ease, but if we take off from any kind of slope, we can actually fly upwards and speed through the entire level, skipping that missile launch section at the end and flying right to the end of the level. Red Tails is absolutely insane, and it's a shame that he's only available in the multiplayer mode. Eggman also gets an alternate outfit, but it makes him look like he stormed the capital. He doesn't get a speed boost either, instead he gets a stronger gun, which really only matters in the multiplayer. So we were able to beat Metal Harbor using Red Tails, and we had a special guest watching in the chat. AxlThunder, who is a very good Sonic Adventure speedrunner, was watching the stream with us, and he was trying out some of these levels as well. And he actually found a way to beat the level using regular Tails by damage boosting off of this enemy to clear this gap, and then later using a structure in the background to get enough height to skip the missile countdown trigger, and then glide from the top of the missile to the end like we did in the Rouge video. So I gotta give a huge shout out to AxlThunder for joining us on this challenge and proving that normal Tails can also do this level. I'll have a link to his videos and channel in the description. Please go give him a follow as well. He's been a big help throughout this entire run and definitely deserves some love. Next up is the Sonic vs Shadow boss fight, which like in previous videos, loads in Eggman as our opponent. And again, like in the previous videos, he doesn't attack us. A viewer pointed out that I can actually tweak the settings in the character selecting mod that I use to force the correct opponent into this fight. And while I will consider this not official since I'm using an additional mod to make this possible, it's still pretty funny to see Tails and Sonic fighting, so I thought I'd include it here. Tails unfortunately cannot hurt Sonic either as a mech or out of the mech, so the fights are impossible, but watching Sonic beat up Tails is pretty silly. Green Forest is up next, and yet again, just like in City Escape, we hit an invisible wall right at the start. I don't really know why there are random invisible walls that only seem to be affecting the mech characters, but we can get around this one just by gliding, so it's not an issue. This level is full of other issues though. Jump pads and springs don't get us to where we need to go, and the vines will soft lock us just like they did with Rouge. We can get to about here with Tails before we can't progress any further. So just like we did with City Escape, we just gotta start flying from the beginning and make it all the way to the end. AxlThunder also pointed out something interesting as well. For some reason, Tails actually moves faster going up these slopes, which is weird because nobody else does this. There's just a lot of really weird stuff that seems to happen when we use mech characters in these levels. If you have any theories as to why this happens, feel free to leave a comment down below. Regardless though, this level is possible to complete as Tails just by flying through, so we'll go ahead and move on to Pumpkin Hill. Tails is extremely limited on this level, because we can't use the rockets since they crashed the game, so we're stuck on the bottom. So instead, we'll use this as an opportunity to introduce Mechless Tails instead. Mechless Tails can fly for as long as he wants horizontally, and he has a small attack that he can use to defeat enemies, and he can use the rockets without crashing the game, so this level becomes much more doable. We do need to make sure that we get the shovel claws so that the game doesn't force an emerald to spawn underground though, and grabbing the shovel claws as Tails is actually really funny. Oh god, look at his eyes going up and down! Whoa. We get our first emerald under Ghost Train Mountain, the second one is inside this ghost enemy, and the third one is next to these burning skulls, completing Pumpkin Hill. Just for fun, we wanted to see what Eggman looks like if he grabs the shovel claws, and this was the result. Whoa! I am the Eggman! I broke my back! I am the Eggman! Sage, bring me my back pillow! Aquatic Mind is our next stage, which poses a few challenges. We can't get into the top room, so we can't lower the water level all the way down. And this level has ghosts that will jump scare you, and this crashes the game as Tails, so we have to be careful to avoid these. I found a free emerald piece up in the air, and it was a tricky jump, but we were able to get it just by jumping off this ledge here. We do have to die to re-roll the emerald pieces, and the only way to do that on this level is to drown. and Tails does not have a drowning animation, so his pupils just disappear as if he's in some sort of a creepypasta. If I had a nickel for every time something scary happened during these challenges, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice now. The next emerald was just sitting out in the open here, and the final emerald was in the ghost room inside of this ghost, so we carefully grabbed that to avoid jump scares and complete Aquatic Mind. Pyramid Cave is up next, and this is a level that I've previously done as the Chow Walker, who also goes fast, but not as fast as Red Tails. I didn't realize how much the speed helped back then though. We can't use this pulley because the spring interrupts the animation, so we need to do a very difficult jump to get to the next area. The Chow Walker and Red Tails can make this jump pretty easily with their boosted speed. For regular Tails, it's a lot harder. If we hit the glide button as soon as we jump, we do get a little bit of extra height. What you'll see me doing here is using the pause menu to make this timing easier. This is called pause buffer jumping, and we'll be using it a lot during this challenge. It took a lot of tries, but eventually we do make it across the gap. From here, we gotta flip the switch and jump up these platforms to make it to the top. Ironically, there's a lot more platforming in this level with Tails than Sonic. When we get to this area, we can do another pause buffer jump off this metal box to make it to the next ledge, and then another pause buffer jump to make it up to the next one. We can't actually make it up to the next part here, so instead we need to glide out of bounds and go around this entire section. We can fly all the way to the time tunnel area, and Tails can make it down this tunnel no problem. We just gotta be careful not to get grabbed so the game doesn't crash. The next area, however, we can't get past, so we actually need to backtrack back to where we got out of bounds and then skip this entire area. We can probably make it to the very end this way too, but I do want to explore more of the level, so I landed here at this loop and we moved on. We get to another spring that does nothing for us, so for this part we gotta fly around this whole area here where we're faced with yet another timed platforming area, which is a little bit harder than last time because the platforms are closer together. Once we get up there, there's a switch with a timed door up this ramp, and Tails just barely doesn't have enough speed to make it in time. So we gotta get around, which is a very difficult jump, but with the power of pause buffering, we managed to make it around, clear the loop, and make it to the end, beating the level as Tails. Also, for funsies, we can just fly through the entire level as Red Tails right from the start, just like we did with Rouge, only this time we don't need to do any advanced techniques like glide cancelling. We can just cruise all the way to the finish. So, not only is this level possible, but there's an easy mode for all of you fake-ass gamers who can't handle the difficult jumps. Up next is Death Chamber, and for this one, we need to use a technique that we haven't covered before in any of these challenges. In order to explain it, I first need to explain how emerald spawning works in this game. Whenever we load the level, whether it be by selecting it for the first time, dying, or restarting, the game will determine the 3 emerald locations, and it tries to make it so the player has to explore the whole level. So the game will try to make Emerald 2 far away from Emerald 1, and then Emerald 3 far away from Emerald 2. For example, in this level, there's 2 key locations in the red room right where we spawn, but the game will never select both of these locations at the same time because it wants us to have to explore the entire level. The problem is, Tails is very limited in this level. He can't really explore much of it. So we need to manipulate the game in order to give us specific keys. The way we do that is by getting the emeralds in the opposite order. By getting the emeralds backwards, this makes it possible to get 2 that would normally not spawn together. So all we need to do is keep resetting until we get the keys that we're looking for. To make this easier, I'm using a mod that enables tracking of all 3 of the emeralds. This does not change how the emeralds spawn or anything, so it doesn't invalidate the challenge. This is just so instead of manually checking the spots for the keys, I can just check if we get a ping, and if we don't, I know to reset. So it's just to save time for the sake of the live stream viewers. After resetting, we get the first key floating on this wall. To get it, we have to stand at this torch at the very edge so we don't get hit by the fire. And then we need to time a very difficult jump to grab the key as it floats by. Then we keep dying until the second key spawns on top of this fire pit. It's tricky because we have to get damaged and then jump back onto it while we're on the cooldown, and then we have to do a pause buffer jump to get high enough to grab the key. After that, we keep resetting until we get a location for the last key that we can grab, which ended up being the key inside the green hallway. So, with some manipulation of the game's mechanics, we are able to beat Death Chamber. We unfortunately cannot defeat King Boom Boo, however. Tails has no way to get him out of the ground to damage him. What's interesting though is the boss seems to move a lot slower if we play as Tails, so it seems like his speed is actually connected to the player speed, which is something I never really noticed. Also, trying to shoot the ghost holding the switch early crashes the game. So yeah, some interesting stuff, but unfortunately this boss is impossible, making this our first level that we cannot beat as Tails. The next boss, however, we can beat, but it's pretty tricky. To damage Sonic's egg golem, we need to jump on the platforms on his back and then jump on his head to deal damage. The timing of these jumps is very difficult, and to make things harder, we can't fall into the sand or else the game crashes. And Egg Golem has one attack that we cannot avoid taking damage, which is his spinning arms attack. So we need to defeat him quick enough that we don't take too much damage and die. It was really tricky, but we were able to manage it, and since the other Egg Golem fight is designed for mechs, this makes Tails and Eggman the only characters who can defeat both Egg Golems. Meteor Herd is next, and thanks to the low gravity, we can actually get around pretty far in this level. We can get all the way up the center tower and on the surrounding platforms, and this is about as high as we can get though, so we need to avoid any emeralds that spawn higher than this. We also have to be careful because I got baited into the center of this platform by an emerald, only to realize that I'm stuck here, and the only way to die here is to get struck by like 5 meteors, so instead I took the L and reloaded the level from the menu. We ended up grabbing Emerald 1 here behind this platform, Emerald 2 was behind this door that I needed to shoot a meteor into, and Emerald 3 was up here inside this Chaos Zero. And with that, we beat Meteor Herd, which brings us to the Rouge boss fight, which loads in Eggman as usual, but for some reason we're able to kill Eggman in only 2 shots. I'm thinking it's because at this point, Tails has his upgraded cannon and Eggman does not have his upgraded shield. Whatever the reason is, we defeat him in 2 shots and move on to Crazy Gadget. And this is sadly where the run dies. Like Rouge, Tails cannot interact with gravity switches or destroy the glass to these pipes to progress. And unlike Rouge, we cannot get out of bounds at the start. We don't actually get control of Tails for the first few seconds while he's falling in, so we can't make it up that wall to get out of bounds. And not even Red Tails can help us here. There is one ramp that we can use to fly upward, but the ceiling resets us to a horizontal fly, so we have no way to fly all the way back up to the start like this. So we had a good run, but unfortunately Crazy Gadget is just not possible as Tails. Final Rush is also a bit of an anticlimactic finish to the hero story. This level cannot be done as any of the mech versions of Tails, as the level starts with us on a rocket, which will crash the game if we do it as a mech. Mechless Tails, however, can beat the level easily just by flying, but it's very slow and not that interesting or exciting. We just sort of cruise over the entire level until we get to the end. It's kind of cool to look at, but not very interesting to talk about, so we'll just move on to Dark Story. We skip Iron Gate since it's a mech level, and we'll go right into the Hot Shot boss fight, which plays out pretty much the same as the Bigfoot fight. We shoot him dead and then move on to Dry Lagoon. Just like with Sonic, trying to ride the turtle crashes the game, so we're stuck in this first room, and we're even more limited as Tails because we cannot get to the very top of the room. So again, we need to manipulate the game by grabbing emeralds out of order. Our first emerald is on top of the center structure, which we can get to by jumping on this statue and then scrambling on top of this pot that he's holding. Then we pause buffer jump to get on his head, and from there we can get to the middle ledges, and we can glide to the structure to grab the first emerald. A couple of resets later and we find Emerald 2 hanging off this tree, and finally we find the last emerald just chilling here in the grass to complete Dry Lagoon. Radical Highway is up next, and something kind of interesting happens here. We don't spawn on the rail like Shadow would normally, instead we spawn on this platform. It's not the mod that's doing this either, as other levels don't give us any kind of help like this. I'm thinking maybe it's just because Radical Highway and Mission Street maybe share some code or something, but I honestly have no idea, but it's pretty convenient because we would not be able to get up here otherwise. So we'll go ahead and just count it. We can make it all the way to this spring up here, which does not get us high enough to make it to the next platform. We can glide over to the next area, but there are death barriers preventing us from doing so. So instead, we need to fly from a higher point and just skip past this entire area. We make it to the big loop and the spring building, which surprisingly does work, but we are then met with another spring that does not get us high enough. Fortunately, this time we can just skip to the next area by gliding over, but I accidentally took this spring, which leads to a swinging bar, which crashes the game. So this time I just flew past that entire area and tried the next part. We make it past the double loops and then glide over to the higher platform, carefully tiptoeing on this steel beam, and then we jump around to the next area. We can get to the end of this tunnel where there's a rolling barrier that we can't get past, so we backtrack just to fly around it. We make it all the way to the final loop, which is where we get stuck. This loop is a scripted event, so it doesn't behave like the other loops in the game. And when we do break free and fly forward, we get teleported back to the start to get stuck all over again. So yet again, we just have to fly over it and make it to the end of the level. It kinda sucks that a lot of these end up just being fly to the end solutions, but I hope I'm doing a good job at least of showing off as much of the level as possible. Egg Quarters is up next, and we need to make sure we grab the pick nail so the game doesn't force underground emeralds. And I'm sure the animation is going to be completely normal and not scary. We find our first emerald in this box, and we don't need to do these out of order as there's a lot more of the level that we can explore as Tails. The second one we find in the main room on top of these pillars, and I was so surprised we were actually able to get up here with some clever jumps. The third emerald we find floating in the wall, just like the one in Death Chamber. We just gotta stand at the edge of this flame pot so we don't take damage, and then time the jump to collect the third key to complete the level. Security Hall is up next, and I was not prepared for how many difficult jumps are going to be required for this one. We can get to the second floor by using the pulley at the start, and we even pick up our first easy emerald inside this box. To get to the third floor, we need to jump off this Mystic Melody statue and do a pause buffer jump to make it to this ledge. And from there, we need to very carefully time a jump to make it to the next beam. Then we gotta get on top of this wooden box and get a running start and time another pause buffer jump to make it all the way to this beam here. And that gets us to the third floor. To get to the highest point, we need to pause buffer jump onto these metal boxes, and then with another running start, pause buffer jump again and make it to the pulley, which takes us to the top of the level. These jumps are all very difficult, and this level is on a time limit, which makes things even harder. I managed to find the second emerald up here, and I died after to reset the level. However, on this level, when you die, you don't get your full 5 minutes back. You get whatever time that you had left after finding the last emerald, which in this case was just over a minute. If time runs out, that will restart the entire level and we lose all of our emeralds that we've already collected. And there are no instant deaths that we can use in this level, so taking enough damage to die does take about 15 or 20 seconds. So finding this last emerald is going to be tricky. Luckily at the spawn there are computer hints, so we can use these to determine if the emerald's worth going for, or if I should die and try to get a new one. And after a few resets, I find the last emerald floating above the air vents. It was pretty difficult, but we did manage to beat Security Hall. The Flying Dog boss fight was about as easy as the other two mech fights. In fact, if we damage him while hovering, we actually get boosted up in the air a bit, so that makes things just a little bit easier even. White Jungle is next, and we're already dead. For some reason, this level just starts with us getting launched to the side. We can counter this by holding forward on the control stick when loading in, but it's yet another weird oddity that only seems to be affecting the mech characters. With this level, we just need to be careful not to touch the vines like in Green Forest, and sadly not even these bungee vines work either, so we need to do a lot of gliding around everything. We can probably just glide from the start all the way to the finish, but I wanted to at least try to complete as many parts of the level as we could, which is good because we actually discovered that the horizontal bungee vines actually do work, though they don't launch us far enough to clear this gap, so again we just fly past it from the start of the level. This next part however we can get past just by taking the spring and then gliding over to the loop. And then as we go up the loop we can jump off and glide over to the next area. But again, we get stuck in here with no way to progress, so instead we need to land on that loop and then backtrack up the ramp to get high enough to fly around it. Luckily, Tails again runs quickly up these hills like he did in Green Forest, but something strange did happen. I got this random error saying an internet connection is required, and I have absolutely no clue why I got this. I've never received this error when playing the game before, and I didn't even lose my internet at this time, so I have absolutely no clue why this happened. Somebody please tell me in the comments below because I'm just lost. I have no idea what this is. It didn't really do anything though. We were able to keep going, but it's kind of cool how this game is still surprising me after like 20 years later. Moving on with the rest of the level, we fly to the ring dash area here, and we can get past this by just gliding around to the next loop. Then we gotta backtrack and run up the loop to get enough height to make it to the next platform. Next we gotta do a difficult jump off this floating weight to get to the upper platform. The horizontal vines this time are actually too effective and they launch us past the other one. So instead of taking these, we head back and use the Mystic Melody to make it to this other horizontal vine, which still overshoots us, but we're high enough now that we can just glide to the next platform. And after one more pulley, we make it all the way to the finish. You might have noticed that the time limit disappeared at some point during that level, and that's because to save time, we're using save states to avoid having to fly through the beginning of the level multiple times. And using save states does make the time limit go away for some reason, but it doesn't actually stop the time, so we can just use the regular clock on the left side to make sure that we still beat the level in under 10 minutes, which is the time limit for White Jungle. But let's be honest, you didn't even notice it, so I don't want to hear none of you guys in the comments going, actually, you technically didn't beat the level because the time limit wasn't there, or I'll send your ass to a faraway forest. Sky Rail is next, and because Tails can't grind the rails, we have to just glide through the entire level, so I guess it's not really Sky Rail, it's just Sky. Normally I'd show off the parts that we can do, but this level is literally just rails and these propeller springs which Tails can't interact with. There's honestly nothing else to show off, so we'll just quickly glide over to the finish and move on to everyone's favorite level, Mad Space. Without the rockets, I was certain this level would be only possible with mechless Tails, but we can actually get around a good chunk of this level in the mech. The small meteorite is actually close enough that we can just jump and glide to it and get in its gravitational pull. And if we keep going, we can make it to the capsule planet. We unfortunately cannot get to the third planet or any higher than this. We can get really close by using this spring on capsule planet, but we just barely miss it. Red Tails, however, can just slingshot around the planet so fast that we actually fly upwards all the way to the top, so technically we do have full access to the entire level, but for the sake of the challenge I want to try doing it as regular Tails instead. And we can do that by once again manipulating the emerald spawns by grabbing them backwards. The first one we get on the train orbiting the small meteorite, Emerald 2 we find on the platform beneath the spawn, and then after a dozen or so resets, the last emerald we got inside this wooden box on Capsule Planet. Tails for some reason can't shoot the floating boxes, but we're able to just grab it by clipping into the box, so Mad Space is surprisingly possible as Tails. Before we move on to the final level of Dark Story, I want to take this opportunity to make a quick correction from my last video. I was so confident that Cosmic Wall was impossible as Rouge, but AxlThunder once again did the impossible and showed that there is a way to beat the level. Again, I gotta give some serious props to him for figuring this out, and it's really awesome that other people are interested in doing these kind of challenges too. I'll have a link to Axel's video in the description, please go check it out and definitely show him some love. But let's move on with our Tails challenge with Final Chase, and again, this is going to be one of those fly through the whole level deals. There's not much to show off, the gravity pipes work just as well as they do for Shadow, and Red Tails can use them to fly upward and just go wherever he wants, but besides this, it's just a slow glide to the finish line. So we'll move on to the final Shadow fight, and let's be real, we probably could easily do it as Blue Tails, but it is so much funnier doing this as Red Tails. He goes so fast that he actually gets teleported back if we go too far away from Eggman, and we can just run through and shoot him at full speed the second he spawns, like a drive-by shooting. This is honestly my favorite way to do this fight now. And that brings us to Cannon's Core. We'll go ahead and skip Eggman and Tails' part since we know those can be done with the mech. Mech Tails can't really do much in Rouge's part. We don't get control until a few seconds after loading, so we can't just glide from the spawn to activate the time switch. So we tried using Mechless Tails and we can get a little bit higher, but there's still no way to get to the switch at the top. Luckily we don't need it, Tails can clip through the wall here to make it to the other side. Getting into the next room is kind of difficult because we have to hit this switch on the wall when the block is out of our way, and then we have to jump on this very narrow railing on the platform so we can get high enough to make it to the tunnel. And then after a very scary encounter with the bubble chaos enemies where I have 0 rings, we managed to hit the switch to open the cage, and now we just gotta make it back outside and throw the switch to start the Knuckles part. Now Tails is not going to be able to do this part normally because we have no way of getting back up once we jump down into the water. And I'd hope that we can just shoot this door and maybe cheese the level, but unfortunately that doesn't work. There is an out of bounds clip that I normally use as Knuckles during this part, which is a lot harder to do as Mech Tails since his hitbox is so much bigger. I was eventually able to do it, but unfortunately Tails falls like a rock and we actually can't get far enough out of bounds to get to the end. So once again we have to use Mechless Tails. He can also do this out of bounds clip, and it was actually kind of easier since his hitbox is smaller. So we're able to fly out of bounds, get to the end of the level, and beat Knuckles' part with Mechless Tails. Sonic's part is last, and unfortunately we technically have to consider this impossible because Sonic spawns grinding on a rail, and this causes Tails to soft lock at the start. But just for the sake of curiosity, I used the randomizer mod to let us play the level as Tails. We were able to make this first gap by gliding, and we can get up to this wall where we have to roll under. This is where we get stuck, but just like Rouge did, we're able to glide out of bounds from the start and just fly around and land on the water slide at the end. The water slide itself doesn't work for Tails, but we can just run down the slide. So technically this level is still impossible because of that soft lock earlier, but aside from that, we can get to the end, so I'd say that the Cannon's Core is pretty doable as Tails. And that brings us to the final fight, the Biolizard. Now technically the final hazard fight's supposed to be the last, but sadly there's no way to get Tails into that level without a super form, so this is going to be our final fight for the challenge. Mech Tails has no way of damaging this guy from the ground, and flying into him doesn't give us any height like it did with Rouge, so we can't glide up to the top. But if we ditch the mech and use Mechless Tails one last time, it's a different story. There are a few spots along his neck that we can fly into that will bounce us up high enough to damage him by flying into his weak spot. It's a tricky maneuver because the hitbox for Tails' flying attack is very small. It was after all designed to only hurt Chao. But luckily, once we get that first hit, we get launched pretty high up, so we don't have to bounce on his neck again. And we just need to make sure that we damage him before he starts his egg bubble attack, because that plays a cutscene which will interrupt our flying. The final attack turns off the gravity, but we can still fly and deal the final blow, defeating the Biolizard and ending this challenge. This challenge absolutely blew me away. I was so convinced that the mech characters would be the most limited, but it turns out Tails can beat almost every single level in the game. Crazy Gadget and King Boom Boo, and I guess technically Cannon's Core and the Final Hazard, are the only things stopping us from beating the entire game as Tails. It's ironic because the whole story for Tails in the Adventure series is him learning to be more independent and not reliant on Sonic, and it turns out he can actually beat more of this game than Sonic can. And with that, gamers, that is the end of this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. It was so much more fun and interesting than I expected. And I want to give a huge thank you to everybody who tuned into the live streams. We got so many super chats, memberships. Honestly, thank you guys so much for supporting the channel during these streams. And I gotta give one last big thank you to AxlThunder for spitballing ideas and showing me some cool tricks during this challenge. Definitely go give them a follow if you haven't already. And if you're new to this channel and enjoy Sonic Adventure 2, please make sure you subscribe for more videos and to be notified of when I'm streaming live right here on YouTube. And if you want to help the channel grow, please leave me a like and a comment, share the video with a friend. We've been getting so many new subscribers thanks to the Sonic Adventure content, and I really want to keep making these videos, so I really appreciate all the engagements so that YouTube shows these videos to more people. Once again, everybody, thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and as always, stay epic, gamers.